be more careful in future. Thank you. We now proceed to the next urgent question. Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office if he will make a statement on the deportation of Afghan refugees from Pakistan to Afghanistan.
Minister Trevelyan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The UK has a long-standing and close relationship with Pakistan. We engage regularly with the government of Pakistan to advance key priorities and interests, including on human rights and adherence to international law. We are closely monitoring Pakistan's policy on the deportation of Afghanistan's citizens from Pakistan, and we are working with the UNHCR and with IOM to ensure that Pakistan adheres to its international human rights obligations with respect to those affected. We understand that the recently elected government of Pakistan intends to resume their programme of deportations from mid-April following a winter pause, although this has not yet been formally announced. And whilst we respect Pakistan's sovereign right to control its borders, the UK, alongside the international and donor community, are urging Pakistan to do so in accordance with their international obligations. The UK has committed £18.5 million to the International Organisation for Migration, IOM, in Afghanistan to support vulnerable, undocumented returnees from Pakistan and Iran. As part of this work, we have been engaging closely with the government of Pakistan on these measures, and they have assured us of their support in relation to preventing the deportation of Afghans eligible for resettlement in the UK under Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy, ARAP, or Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme, the ACRS scheme. Since the formation of the new Pakistani cabinet, the Foreign Secretary and the British High Commissioner have received assurances from Foreign Minister Dar during discussions on the 25th and the 28th of March, respectively, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would support our relocations work. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, we continue to work closely with the UNHCR and IOM to ensure that all Afghans who have been found eligible, including eligible family members, for resettlement in the UK under the ARAP and ACRS schemes have been provided with the necessary documentation to verify this and to prevent their deportation.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Saying that Afghanistan is not a safe place is something of an understatement. Almost two-thirds of the Afghan population were in need of humanitarian aid by the end of last year. And in the words of the United Nations High Commissioner, human rights are in a state of collapse. The restriction on women and girls amount to nothing less than a gender apartheid. Afghanistan is not a safe place for anyone, but is particularly not safe for the Afghan who worked along Western forces and diplomatic efforts, for civil society advocates, for women who formerly held high-profile political or legal roles, for members of the LGBTQ community, and the many, many others who were forced to flee when the Taliban took control. And many of those who fled to Pakistan are desperately awaiting resettlement to safe countries, including the UK. And yesterday, reports suggest that Pakistan has started that deportation of Afghans back to Afghanistan. And resettlement, the hope of safety and being reunited with families, is now at risk of being completely lost. And for some of those waiting to come here, the routes are open, but the process is achingly slow. Many await family reunion, which was promised to start this spring, whilst others believe that they will be eligible to apply to come to safety in the UK under ACRS Route 3 Pathway 2, as yet unopened, almost 3 years after the fall of Kabul. I urge the Minister's Home Office colleagues to act in this regard. Pakistan's decision to deport the migrants they deem to be illegal is deeply worrying. In the first round of deportations in October last year, which was the subject of an urgent question by the Mobile Member for Glasgow Central, there were news reports of Afghans eligible for resettlement here being arrested during immigration enforcement. There is every reason to believe that this will happen again. And indeed, this round, Madam Deputy Speaker, puts even more people at risk. Afghans in Pakistan are meant to hold a Pakistan-issued Afghan citizen card. However, there are reports of long delays for applications to be processed, leaving people undocumented through no fault of their own. And more concerningly, it has been reported that the latest round of deportations will even include those carrying cards. And effectively, this puts at risk every Afghan in Pakistan, no matter their reason for being there. The UK has a responsibility here, not just to those Afghans who we promised safety to, but in relation to the region as a whole. We can all understand the desire to flee from persecution, but we also understand the difficulties placed on support systems in Pakistan in response to those fleeing reaching their borders. If we want to show the UK as a global power and a global force for good, then we must act. So I ask the Minister, what steps the Department is taking to ensure that all individuals eligible for resettlement or reunification in the UK are able to register themselves as being legally in Pakistan? What steps the Department is taking to prevent deportations of Afghans in Pakistan if they are likely to be eligible to settle in the UK? What steps they are taking with foreign allies to encourage Pakistan to halt these repatriations? And finally, what steps the UK can take to assist Pakistan in supporting that refugee population? People are being sent back to Afghanistan now, and all the dangers that entails. We must act. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's good to have the opportunity to discuss this issue. The Honourable Lady raises an important question, but I can repeat the assurances that we have now had from this newly elected Pakistani government. They have repeated assurances that we had from the previous government that all Afghans who are eligible for our UK resettlement schemes, various, will be exempt from deportation. We have had 2 instances of temporary detentions where the British High Commission has intervened to secure those, and that has gone well. And since November, all those eligible Afghans eligible for resettlement in the UK are provided with identification, a letter by the British High Commission, and that is being considered acceptable by the Government of Pakistan. None of those have been detained or deported as a result of that letter, which is that commitment from us through the High Commission to assure them that our commitment to those eligible Afghans to come to the UK are under our umbrella of protection.
James Heappey.
Gosh, Madam Speaker, 5 years since my last question, but the first time ever being called first. Madam Speaker, it seems curious that we're having a question on the sovereign decision of another government, and whilst the Honourable Lady wants to challenge the front bench on our representations to that government, I thought it important to reflect that throughout my time owning the Arab scheme, at least the MOD, the Pakistan government was extraordinarily supportive of everything we asked them. So would the Right Honourable Lady join me in paying tribute to both our High Commissioner and her brilliant team at post in Islamabad, but also in making clear our continued gratitude to the government of Pakistan for the incredible flexibility they show in facilitating both Arab and ACRS?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's a pleasure to be able to discuss this issue in a new way with my right honourable friend. We've been working closely on these issues within government, and his commitment to making sure that those eligible for these schemes have been able to come to the UK has been without exception absolutely incredible. And just to add to that, since October of last year, we've been able to complete 24 charter flights and relocated over 5,500 individuals under the ongoing Arab scheme. And I absolutely pay tribute to the incredible tireless efforts of our British High Commissioner Jane Marriott and her wonderful team in Islamabad, who continue to work day in, day out with the Government of Pakistan, their officials and their military, who help us to ensure that we can bring those Afghans safely to the UK in due course.
Shadow Minister Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for North East Fife for bringing forward this urgent question and for her work across the House on women particularly suffering in these circumstances. And despite Afghanistan no longer occupying the headlines, the situation for the country is stark, and that we know across the House. Women in particular living under a gender apartheid, and the men and women who fought bravely for a better Afghanistan alongside British armed services, often targeted and killed by the Taliban, as confirmed by the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. Labour's always been clear that we owe many Afghans a debt of gratitude for supporting British aims in Afghanistan. Now, she mentioned the figure 5,500, but could she say how many she estimates now require protection so that they're not repatriated back across the border? And would she answer 3 other brief questions for the information of the House? Firstly, could she detail the discussion she's had with the Pakistani government to halt or at least limit the returns to Afghanistan? What steps she's taking to belatedly bring to safety those at-risk Afghans, particularly former members of the Afghan security force, particularly now that certain members are no longer in the government and maybe not there to make the case for these vulnerable individuals? What steps are being taken to commit to a strategy across the board to support women and girls in Afghanistan, to give them hope that they have not been forgotten, and to recognise the important work done by Her Noble Baroness Kennedy and others on gender apartheid in these Houses of Parliament? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as the Honourable Lady highlights, my right honourable friend has been a stalwart in making sure that those who are eligible for ARAP, and indeed from the wider cohort, the ACRS schemes, have been moving forward. As I say, we have an agreement, and the government of Pakistan, the new government, are supporting it, that where we indicate from the High Commission that these are people who are eligible for the scheme, they are comfortable that we are therefore going to bring them across. And as I say, that number since October illustrates that continuing repatriation of these people across here. So those discussions are daily between the High Commission and various parts of the government of Pakistan as required to ensure and make progress on all of those issues. And we continue to bring those across. The Honourable Lady is absolutely right. My right honourable friend has been an absolute champion for making sure that those are eligible go through the system. I can reassure her that my other right honourable friend, who has now taken over that brief in the Ministry of Defence, will, I know, continue to ensure that as the programme rolls out, it goes at the pace and indeed the assurance that those who are in Pakistan looking to come to the UK for safety are expecting.
Sir Oliver Heald.
My right honourable friend knows there are people who, in the process of making their way to Pakistan from Afghanistan, became undocumented, but who nonetheless are entitled to resettlement here, either because they helped us in our military or because of their work in the legal system. And would she agree with me, it is important, if possible, for the Pakistani government to continue to show enough flexibility so that while somebody is showing that they are entitled to come here and that becomes documented, that during that process they're protected?
Thank you. Honourable friend is absolutely right. The importance of making sure that all those who are eligible, who have applied and are being processed or have been processed through the scheme, who may still be in Pakistan and not yet made it here to the UK, they have this support literally controlled by the team at the High Commission, and they have these letters of support so that the government of Pakistan knows that they are within our ARAP eligible umbrella, and that will continue to be the case until such time as we've been able to bring them all to the UK.
SNP spokesman Martin Docherty-Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I think it's only right and proper that the member for North East Fife who's bringing this urgent question today, so congratulations to them. And I've noted in a reference from the recent joint committee on the human rights, I note that the learned member for Edinburgh South West, who's the chair, is actually in their place. The committee report highlights that the Prime Minister of Pakistan has referenced the Rwanda scheme as their justification for actually deporting Afghans back into the hands of the Taliban. I wonder if the Minister agrees that the Afghans who fought with British forces, the men and women who fought with British forces, and were not brought out of safety with Operation Pitting, yet managed to flee the Taliban and use small boats to cross the channel to get to the UK, should not be sent to Rwanda, or as a message from the present British government to our allies, we'll use you, we'll drop you when we've had our way with you?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as we have discussed, of course, the question of Rwanda a lot in recent weeks. We consider, as does the international community, Rwanda as a safe country. I don't think it's comparable in that sense to Afghanistan, but importantly, as I say, for all those who have, as the Honourable Gentleman highlights, worked alongside British forces and who have applied and are eligible for ARAP, or indeed those not in the military space but more widely applied and are eligible for the ACRS scheme, we are continuing to ensure that they are able to have that protection through the letter from the High Commission in Pakistan whilst they're there, whilst we look to bring them to the UK in due course, and that will continue to be the case until that programme is completed.
Alexander Stafford.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Of the estimated 1.7 million refugees on the border, many of those are going to be members of Christians or other minority religious sects. What safeguards is the UK government putting in place or having conversations with the Pakistan government to make sure those Christians are not returned to Afghanistan where they will be persecuted and that faith can shine through?
Minister. Honourable friend raises an important point, and one that is important to raise, and as I said in my statement earlier, we will continue always to remind the new government of Pakistan, as we had the previous one, of their international obligations around some of these incredibly difficult issues, and that's a conversation, as I say, because we have a very good relationship with the government of Pakistan that we continue to do daily.
Naz Shah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm a really proud foster parent to an Afghan refugee who came over, and I'm actually a grandmother by that standard now. So I am really grateful for the urgent question, and I am really concerned about those that have been forcibly taken out of Pakistan, and particularly the reports about those that were actually born in Pakistan. But it does smack me of a bit of a sick joke, if you like, if that on one hand we're talking about bringing Afghan refugees here, but on the other hand, tonight, this government will be voting down the Noble Lord Brown's amendment for Afghans who actually supported us, our British armed forces, that could be packed off to Rwanda. So my question is really simple. How do we show a moral stance on the issue today when the government will be voting down that amendment for Afghans who are at risk?
Minister.
Madam Secretary, first of all, I think how lovely to hear of that personal commitment to refugee from the honourable member's family. I think so many stories like that are so important. It's lovely to hear them brought here, because I think to champion and show that the commitment is much more than just words is lovely to hear, and congratulations on becoming, as it were, a granny. It's a lovely story to share. I think really importantly, and the Honourable Lady raises the question of those who worked and served alongside our armed forces or in other areas. Those two schemes, incredibly generous schemes, ARAP and ACRS, are there precisely to be able to provide the opportunity for those who wish to apply, who are eligible, to come and have safe harbour in the UK. And that's a scheme, particularly ARAP, which will continue for as long as is needed, and we encourage those who perhaps haven't, though the numbers suggest that very large numbers have already applied to do so, and it is a long-standing, as I say, and very generous scheme which we will continue to do. And week in, week out, we are able to bring these incredibly brave people who served and supported our armed forces to the UK.
Mark Logan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And my Afghan diaspora in Bolton takes this matter very seriously under the leadership of Dr. Aziz, who I should also know is opening a new medical centre next week in Bolton. What we'd like to ask is what discussions has government had with the Pakistani High Commissioner to the UK to make sure that those who are eligible won't be adversely affected by this 15th of April deadline that the Pakistani government is now working to deport Afghans from the country.
Minister.
The honourable member raised an important point, and it's good to hear that a new medical centre is opening, which will provide, I'm sure, for the whole community important services. As I say, both our British High Commissioner in Islamabad and indeed the conversations that we have with senior officials here and the Pakistani High Commissioner based in London continue day in, day out. It's a very close relationship. That commitment that we have in provision of a letter of support for those who are in Pakistan waiting to come to the UK because they have been found eligible for one of the two schemes is one that is respected, and the new government of Pakistan have indicated as the other one did.
Joanna Cherry.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as my honourable friend, the member for Western Bartonshire, has already mentioned, in our report on the Rwanda bill, The Joint Committee on Human Rights warned that other nations might be influenced by the way in which the United Kingdom treats its international law obligations. This was earlier this year, and we noted that at that stage, the Prime Minister of Pakistan had already referred to the UK government's Rwandan policy in defence of his decision to deport Afghan refugees. Now, I would suggest to the Minister this is actually quite a serious matter. And does she appreciate that while the Pakistani policy might not be identical to the British government's Rwanda policy, the fact that the British government has been prepared to set to one side its international treaty obligations in respect of refugees and asylum seekers acts as an encouragement to other countries who wish to do the same?
Mr.
Madam Deputy, as I say, I would not compare what we consider Rwanda a safe country for those who would be ineligible for asylum here to be compared to Afghanistan. But really importantly, those Afghan refugees who are eligible to come under one of our two incredibly generous, very broad schemes have that layer of protection until such time as they get here through the High Commission and that relationship that we have with the government of Pakistan, who are very clear that they would not look to deport any of those eligible Afghan refugees to come to the UK.
Gary Sambrook.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can my right honourable friend the Minister explain the assessment which has been made of the adequacy of the humanitarian assistance available to those at the Pakistan and Afghanistan border?
Minister.
The honourable member raises an important point, and I think just to highlight that in terms of our UK commitment, we obviously continue to be one of the largest donors to Afghanistan on a number of humanitarian areas, 113 million in aid last year. And whilst not wishing to speak out of turn because the Development Minister isn't here, he's been in Paris working on an Ethiopian peace package, we hope to be able to invest something near £150 million in the coming financial year in support of those humanitarian challenges for Afghanistan.
Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's possible, indeed likely, that some of the Afghans in Pakistan are those whose ARAP application is currently being reassessed by the MOD. The outgoing Minister for the Armed Forces, and we heard from him just a moment ago, updated the House on this just recently, and I'm due a response to a written question on the progress of this from the Ministry of Defence today. Now, it's good to see the Minister from the Ministry of Defence sat with the Minister, but given the urgency of this matter, can I ask her to give an assurance that her department is working very closely with his department to ensure that where there are potential ARAP-entitled people in Pakistan, their applications are being reassessed as quickly as possible? Thank you.
Minister.
The honourable gentleman raises an important point, and I am comfortable in committing to him that he will receive the reply he hopes to have by the close of play, and that he's absolutely right. We are, the FCDO and the MOD are working hand in glove. The teams are incredibly well joined up, and they are, I mean, to give them a gentle shout out, because they work tirelessly to make sure that everyone's application is properly scrutinised. And as I say, these schemes are very generous, and we will continue to run them until such time we will be able to bring all of those eligible back to the UK for safety.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely ludicrous that after 3 years since the fall of Afghanistan, that we are still talking about people that the UK government has left behind. Absolutely appalling and incompetent that those that supported UK ambitions in Afghanistan have been so woefully neglected.
Hear, hear.
Can she tell me exactly how many people exactly are waiting for the UK government to get their act together and process their ACRS and their ARAP applications?
Hear, hear, hear.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As I say, these are broad and generous schemes, and I can update the House today, because these are the figures I have in front of me, that since October of last year we have been able to complete 24 charter flights and relocated over 5,500 individuals, and we will continue to work on that, and our High Commissioner and her team in Islamabad and the teams here through the Ministry of Defence, the teams who work from the Ministry of Housing, an incredible team of officials working together to make sure that we bring all those who are eligible back to the UK.
Debbie Abrams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. While I acknowledge the role Pakistan has played in hosting Afghans after the pitting exercise, we need to recognise that many of the people that are being returned from Pakistan will be at significant risk. On top of that, many Afghans were incorrectly advised about which scheme to apply for, and as a consequence may not even be in the process. So in addition to those that have started the process, there will be another cohort who haven't started it because of the poor advice before. So given that AICS isn't even opened now, there's no phase 4 opened at this moment, what numbers of people are expected? I've got a constituent, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is really important. What numbers is the Minister expecting aren't on the process and need to be accommodated?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as I say, the ARAP programme is a very generous one and it remains open, and and with ACRS, obviously the first part has been running, and we will continue to run these schemes as we need to. But so the Honourable Lady is very welcome to write to me if she says she has a very specific constituent connection that she wishes to raise. She's very welcome to write to me, and I'm happy to look at that. But the schemes continue to work, and our teams are working day in, day out to make sure that those who are eligible are able to get to the UK.
Matt Weston.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've raised before about the special forces, and who may be stuck now in Pakistan, but also the matter of those who are working in local government, who may have been magistrates and others. Family members, Afghan family members in my constituency, suggest that this could have long-term reputational damage on the UK in terms of how this has been handled. What's her assessment?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Gentleman highlights the fact that the review of further potential eligible applicants is ongoing by the Ministry of Defence, and as decisions on eligibility are determined, they will of course have the support of those who are already in the scheme and eligible to come to the UK. And I'm very proud of what is a very broad and generous scheme, and it will continue to run for some time, I have no doubt, whilst we bring many of these refugees to the UK.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister, as always, for her responses. What steps are government going to take to not only provide safe passage and route for Afghan allies to reach the UK, but also to provide them with safe legal status? I give the case, Madam Deputy Speaker, of one of my constituents who served in Afghanistan in the army. Alongside of him served an Afghani. That Afghani had to leave with his family Afghanistan and flee to Pakistan. I met him in Pakistan 2.5 or almost 3 years ago. The point I want to make is, if we get that gentleman and his family, his wife and his 4 children, to Strangford constituency, we'll get him a job, we'll get him a house, we'll make sure that his children are educated. What we need, Minister, is a visa to ensure that he gets here. And if you can do that, if you can process his application, if the Minister can process his application correctly, then the good people of Strangford will do the rest.
Minister. Madam Speaker, I think and I'm sure you have absolute confidence that the communities of Strangford will wrap their arms around those refugees that come to the UK. And if there is a particular issue, the Honourable is very welcome to write to me, but I know that the British High Commission in Islamabad are working constantly with those there who are eligible to do that paperwork, which is quite extensive, and there are a lot of them. But if there is a particular case and he'd like to raise it with me, I'd be very happy to discuss it.
Thank you. That concludes proceedings on the urgent question, and so we move